Welcome to the Scared So What podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Grant Van Ulbrich. This is the show where we break through the fear of change and ask the question, scared? So what? Each week we dive into personal change management, coaching, and leadership for the future, giving you real-world tools, insights, and stories to help you lead yourself and others through transformation. Whether you're navigating change in your life, your career, or your organization, this is your space to learn, to grow, and to take bold action. So, are you ready? Let's move from fear to forward. And welcome to today's episode of the Scared So What podcast. I'm Dr. Grant, your host, and I am joined by a very special guest all the way across the pond over in Canada. Her name is Mrs Sylvie Anne Hanes. Now, Sylvie is a proud French-Canadian who has more than 30 years of consulting experience specializing in, you guessed it, change management. She enjoys mentoring and helping others in their professional and personal endeavors. Sylvie is experiencing quite a lot of personal change at the moment, and she's going to share how her change management experience is helping her to navigate right through it. So let's welcome today's special guest. Hi, Sylvie. How are you today?
I'm fine, Grant. Thank you so much for having me on your podcast. I'm quite excited to be part of this.
Oh, Sylvie, you and I had connected quite a long time ago. I think it was through the Change Management Review to where we went to one of those webinars together. Is that right?
That's right. It was one of those get to know yourself group breakout, and it was wonderful.
Outstanding. And somehow we had a little connection. And I thought it was funny at first because, as I've shared with you earlier, many of the people that I come across with the biggest resistance to what I'm doing with personal change management is people who are certified in organizational change management. But fortunately, you're on board. You actually read my book. Is that right?
I read your book. I have your app, and I'm quite a fan of it. I really believe it's got its place in our day-to-day.
Oh, bless. Well, that's good to hear from you. Well, today's show, we want to hear from you and our guests. Here on the Scared So What podcast, we talk about personal change, change management itself. We talk about coaching, and we also talk about leadership. So I think I'm just going to open this up and put the spotlight on you for a little bit. Can you tell us a little bit about you and your exciting career in change management?
Absolutely. First, I started off in technology. Like many people, that was a brand new kind of discipline that we could go into. So I started off from the COBOL days of programming and whatnot. But what I really missed was the personal side of things. It was great to program things and have them spit out whatever you needed to have. But I felt that we were missing out on who are the people using these apps that we're coding. And I started realizing that internally I needed to know more about who was going to use the app, which back then wasn't really a question you would ask, and especially not being a starting. But I joined a large consulting company, and on one of my projects were multidisciplinary groups. And so there were two people from change management. And we've gravitated toward each other right away. And as they explained to me what they were doing, and this was in the early days, we're talking 95. So change management has changed a lot over the years, but it was still a discipline in itself, which I thought was really great because I hadn't heard of it a lot before. And I did the switch and I never looked back. I realized that was intrinsically what my need is service and to be able to help people. And by understanding and helping them through all of the tools that we have in change management, that was really where I wanted to be, was with the people and helping them.
Yeah.
And as I mentioned, it has changed over the years. So I consulted for almost 25 years. I retired, did some great stuff like walking across Spain, very introspective.
Nice.
And then I realized that I missed change management. So that was my first retirement. Because Grant, I haven't figured this one out. I'm on my third.
Third retirement. You're and you're young. You still have a lot to go.
I love helping people with change management, through change management. And after 8 years of being retired the first time, my brain was like seeking any opportunity to help people and to put something a little bit more strategic. And with the background that I've had, the great thing about working for a consultant firm is you will go to so many companies that are different in their type of work that they do, in the type of services they offer. I met and worked with people from 40 different companies.
Wow.
And I realized that the ability for a project team to be successful really had to do with making sure that the people that are going to be undergoing the change and doing the new changes that they need to do to move forward, that often that was not thought of, or it was a secondary, oh, we'll give him a little bit of time, and God knows that was the first thing they cut on a budget, right? And I realized that I really wanted to push this in a better light. So I was very selective in returning back to work. I did it for the government. And I found that there, unfortunately, a lot of times the change management is a little bit behind. So with today's world having to do more with less and having to, break down groups to smaller groups, I think people really need to recognize that we're asked to do more with less. And we need to focus more on people. So I went back to consulting, then I took another break, and then I was very specific. I wanted an organization that believed in change. And so I found my perfect role, Grant. It was everything I ever wanted to have. It was a beautiful role in change management. I had a great team. The leadership believed in change so much. They were on our podcast. They were on our not podcast, but our magazines that we had, or our publication. They came to our workshops. They spoke about change and understood it. And I was in heaven.
Amazing. And we won't say the name of that organization, but it was quite large, wasn't it?
Very large organization. However, due to the fact that the world is changing, the demands are changing on how individuals want to be serviced or want to get their goods. And it went through a lot of difficult financial situations. And I was part of the downsize or restructure, whatever you want to call it. So unfortunately, to me, being a change management person is a bit like the cobbler without shoes. We tend to do everything for everybody else and help people in our job, help people that we work with, help people in our family and our friends. But then we tend to forget about ourselves. So
well, and it's so important what you do as well too, because you sometimes, within leadership, they see you as you're the be all fix all, but yet the leadership doesn't necessarily need to know what you do. It's just the change management teams, they'll fix everything. And that just doesn't sound right, does it?
No. And it has to be a partnership. And I think the one thing that I've learned a lot working in change management with people is that the unknown is the driver of concern, of upset, of, oh, whoa, hang on a sec, what's going on? What does that mean for me? I'm so good at what I do right now. Don't jeopardize this type thing. But that we need to go personal before going organization. If you are not comfortable in what's going on, if you're not personally comfortable with what you've got going on in your life, you are affected by what goes on in your day-to-day. And now you're asked to help an organization, bring people around to state that maybe they weren't ready for, they might not have been in agreement at the beginning. Well, you have to make sure that you are healthy and you are comfortable and you are managing your own change as best as you can to be able to help other people manage their change.
I agree with that. Well said. Oh my gosh. Such great experience coming from you today, Sylvie. And thank you so much for being willing to share with us. I'm very sad to hear that you are in your third retirement. It doesn't sound like there's going to be, there are probably going to be more because I think no one's going to be holding you down.
I don't think so. And I think what I've found over the years, and that's the advantage of getting older, is that now I have the privilege, and I worked for it, but I have the privilege that I can do and work and decide where my time is going to be spent without having to worry about, well, I need a 9 to 5 to pay a mortgage. So I'm in a great situation that way, but let it be known that our whole family worked to have us this way. I traveled a lot, so my husband was at home full time. He was
Yeah.
a stay-at-home dad before they even existed.
Hmm.
So he broke a lot of barriers and had to deal with that kind of change in our family. And so our two adult daughters understand change management a lot more than I would have imagined over the years of
Yeah.
understanding what we were going through in our changing roles. But
That
you're
is so
right.
interesting. Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
This this is probably not my last retirement, but I find the word retirement very cryptic because I really, when I was 23, I wrote 5 things down I wanted to do with my life, and one of them was retire at 50. For
Hmm.
some reason, I had an arbitrary number. And after I did retire, it was 51, and I went
Hmm.
and walked across Spain and thought about a lot about life. I realized that retirement is really just the ability to do what you want to do without having as many constraints financially.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. That's
So
so important.
since I was able to find the perfect role I could have ever had, and believe me, I'm still grieving. And this is something that we need to understand also is that we think of grieving as grieving someone who's left us, but
Yeah.
grieving is also, losing the most amazing role I'd ever had
Yeah.
with the most amazing director and senior management and the team that I worked with. I couldn't have asked for better. And every day I'd say to people, I found my best job. And so
Yeah.
to have that stripped away, I'm an adult. I know how business runs. I've been on the side of, you know, downsizing and on the other side of telling people they were downsized.
Yeah.
And I know it's business, but I'm grieving. I'm grieving that role. So I'm looking at it from a point of view now that maybe it's time for me to kind of step away from the traditional working for an
Yeah.
organization and think of what makes me happy. And that role did.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it did. Am I positive that there's other roles like that in the world? Of course there is. I'm just
Hmm.
not sure if I want to put in the effort of finding it because they're few and far between.
So true.
But it's change management is so important in day-to-day life, and I think if we were armed with a lot more understanding of change when we were even in school,
Yeah.
I think as an individual, it would help us to
Well,
understand what's going on.
we talked about that, earlier before we started the show today, and I just want to go back just a few moments. You said, my daughters know much more about change management, probably more so than most, and I'm sure that they got that through your great experiences and your teachings. But as we talked about earlier, before your experience in, the profession you're in with change management, organizational change management, had you ever been taught how to manage personal change for yourself?
I can know. I come from a very traditional family where our parents told us what to do and we would
Hmm.
listen. And then we went to school and the teachers would tell us what to do and we would listen.
Right?
And if we
Yeah.
didn't agree with something or we didn't feel comfortable or whatever, we just were the nice, quiet kids that didn't complain and just tough it up. Suck it
We
up, princess.
Exactly.
That
You're
is
a
it.
little bit better than me. I was a little bit more rebellious to my mom and dad, but I only did it once or twice, and I learned very quickly who was in charge. But it's so true. And I know you said that you've read my book, so we're on the same wavelength. They don't teach this in school or church or synagogue or mosque or in schools or, elementary schools, Sunday schools. And you know what? It's something that you experience every day of your life, personal change, whether it be at home, whether it be when you're traveling abroad, whether it be at work, anywhere you are. But yet, I believe that we should have the right to know how to manage that. And that manifests in fear, stress, worry, anxiety. And that then turns into physical altercations like the stress in the back of your neck, headaches, etc., etc. Shouldn't we be able to learn how to manage that? And I know you advocate heavily for that. So I want to back up just for a second. In your leadership roles, can you tell me, you're in charge of transforming lives and transforming others and change management projects at work and in your organization. What was your leadership style and what do you believe to be important as a leader?
I am probably more personal focus than task focus. So
Mm-hmm.
I need to understand where people are coming from, where their aspirations are, not just in terms of leadership, but in terms of being able to be the best person working with someone at that time.
Yeah.
And believe me, I've been slapped on the hands a few times where people, the senior management sometimes would say, mostly when I was consulting, would
Mm-hmm.
say, you don't need to know all this about the people, or, don't try so hard being their friend. And I say, it's not a question of friend, it's a question of rapport, it's a question of connection,
Trust.
because you're not going to be able to really hear what people are telling you if they can't trust that what they're going to tell you. And they
Yeah.
might say, I feel vulnerable, I feel scared, I feel worried. Well,
Mm-hmm.
if they think that they're telling it to someone who really doesn't care, or someone who, kind of has the butter up, buckle up, princess, just do
Yeah.
it attitude,
Yeah.
they're not going to tell you, and they're not going to advance at the rate that they could, or with the confidence that they might have if someone just took the time to talk to them and find out.
You are
So
so spot on, Sylvie. That's brilliant.
So yeah, I'm really a people person, and I will get to know people. I will make things for them. Like I have definitely passed barriers of this is not acceptable in the workplace,
Mm-hmm.
but I have never gotten an answer back from people that were either hearing from me, or I gave them a little something that was personal, or I shared a book with them, or whatever. I never heard the, how dare you try to get to know me? It
Yeah.
was more like, thank you for listening.
Exactly.
And so
Yeah.
yeah, I've been reprimanded a few times, but keep in mind that one of the things is I try not to burn bridges,
Mm-hmm.
because we never know how small the world is.
So
And
right.
I still keep in touch with some of the clients that I work with 25 years ago. And you
Yeah.
don't do that in a business environment unless you've built a rapport.
Yeah.
And so for me, change management in the world of business and leadership is that you have to be authentic. Don't try to
Mm-hmm.
be someone you're not. So if somebody tells me you can't be excited, you have to be more neutral, don't speak with your hands, which obviously you can't see, but I'm French, so I speak with my hands a lot. I wouldn't be authentic, and I can't be the best that I can be for people if I'm covering up who I really am.
Yeah. Well, you're
And
so
so,
right, and you and I both come, I think, from a similar generations. I've experienced those leaders as well too, and in my research and studies, I found out deeper. Those are transactional leaders, and there's a lot of fears that they have inside them that they don't want to expose, and they will not give in to being vulnerable because they see it as a sign of weakness. When the truth of the matter is, being a transformational leader is passionate, is expressing, is empowering, is endearing and developing. And it involves coaching and it involves being a little bit more vulnerable because that's who people will follow. That's who you learn from. They don't, and so it's so amazing. You're so right. I've had several leaders that have been that way. Grant, you too friendly. You can't be
mm,
friends with your employees.
yeah,
Yet they've all been fired, and I'm still here years later,
yeah,
which is
mhm.
so interesting. Wow. Well, within that, I appreciate that, and I identify with your leadership style very much. I can see us working very well together. Tell me a little bit about coaching and how that plays into change management.
That's interesting, because when I read, you were so kind to give me the questions before we started talking. And yesterday I really spent some time to really focus on it. To me, coaching, the way I see it, is coaching is a little bit more transactional in that we're
Mhm.
specifically addressing an issue, a behavior, a challenge, a way to do work, a way to think about things. It's specific to an activity,
Yeah,
where I find sort of mentoring is more at the higher level. It's not so much transactional. But coaching is also very important, to be able to tell someone, look, you're doing great in this area. You might consider trying this and this and this if you're finding that this is a little bit challenging for you.
there you
Or
go.
let's talk about, where do you want to, where would you like to get some help in coaching, because sometimes also people really don't want any. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of hard to go, "Well, I'll do some coaching with you." And you know, why? I haven't
Yeah.
asked that.
Yeah.
So
And it
other
can be very
things,
dangerous as well, too. You know, we learned in our coaching academy that you cannot coach people who do not want to be coached at all. Stop. Just absolutely stop right
absolutely,
there. Yeah.
absolutely. And again, the rapport has got to be there.
Yeah.
It's hard to be coached by someone that you don't know their background. Yes, they can do it, but when you have that rapport, it just brings it at another level.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I absolutely love that. And I know that it has a place in almost everything that we do at work or wherever we are. I'm a firm believer. Jenny Rogers defines coaching as the art of developing somebody else's learning. And as a coach,
Mm,
your job is just to ask the right questions. And through coaching, we actually get our coachee to live in critical reflection. And that's where ideation comes from. And through my research, I've kind of come up with a phrase that coaching is the transfer of ownership. It truly is. And if
oh,
you think
I
about
like
that,
I
so
like that.
I could be a transactional leader and tell you what to do, and you can tell me where I could go silently, right? And not do it. And when it doesn't work, you come back and say, "Well, I did what you told me to do. What's next?" And that's on me as the leader. But if I coach you and say, "Hey, Sylvie, what do you think you could do? What would you like to do? And how do you feel about that? What do you need from me? And can you
Mm,
go do that?" You came up with the whole idea. It's yours. That's the full transfer of ownership. Now you're more likely to actually go and do it. And if you come back to me and it doesn't work, the worst thing I could do is say, "I told you so," because I didn't. The best thing I could do is say, "All right, Sylvie, what did you learn from that? And what would you want to do next?
yeah.
And what do you think will happen if you do that?" Guide you off the cliff, right? Don't go off if it's going to be bad. But you let people transfer that ownership and you're just facilitating their learning. So I love that you do that in change management. Well, we have a few minutes left. I'm going to go to one deeper question that you had shared with me. You mentioned you're going through quite a bit of personal change at the moment. How are you, as a change management expert, managing that for yourself?
Isn't that funny? The cobbler without shoes. Actually, I have to admit that over the last 10 years or so, I've taken change management to a personal level
Hmm.
a lot. Often we've had a lot of challenges with family and different situations. And I think right now the thing that I'm finding is that I have the freedom of time. I have the freedom of not having to work if I don't want to. It was really to really sit back and say, okay, well, this restructuring. Obviously, business works like business. So at
Yeah.
10 o'clock, I got the call, and then at 10:15, everything was, all the access was removed, and it was like, goodbye. It was nice knowing you. And
Yeah.
although it was done for restructuring purposes, you can't help but sit back and go, whoa. So when you think about
Yeah.
scared, so what? The
Uh-huh.
first one is surprise. I can guarantee you that on that morning at 10 o'clock, I was extremely surprised.
Right.
But then I realized, okay, I need to just breathe, thank the people I worked with. That was really important. And then write a letter to my coworkers because I didn't get a chance to say bye.
Yeah.
And then to say, okay, I need to feel this
Yeah.
because I really need to go through the gamma. And one of the interesting thing, and when you look at the ADKAR, awareness, desire, well, there's a grieving process that I have to go through because I've lost my best leader.
Yeah.
I've lost my best work. I've lost my best role and my best team. And you put that together and you say, okay, I can't move forward until I deal with this. And
Yeah.
so I'm just letting it happen. And so part of it is, writing to these people and telling them how they affected me, how positive it was to work with them, and really let them know that they had a really positive influence on me. And then it's to really sit back and go, I got to let this happen on its own time and not try to push it. So I
Yeah.
have no deadlines. But one of the things that I'm really passionate about is gardening and butterflies, little side thing. And
Hmm.
so I decided to apply to be on the board for an organization that supplies native seeds here in the region. And it's very much about learning about the native plants and how we can help the environment. And I'm also a butterfly ranger. So woohoo!
Nice.
From the David Suzuki volunteer organization. So I'm doing stuff that's kind of fun, definitely fun. But if I'm on the board, so there's work to be done. There's
Yeah.
actual work to be done.
Mm-hmm.
And certainly I'm going to bring change management to the group
Good for
because you
you.
can use it anywhere. So I'm just right now, I'm just going through the grieving and going through the open opportunities everywhere. I'm not rushing. It's going to
Yeah.
come when it comes. And I'm going to give myself the freedom of letting things happen and decide later on. So who knows, maybe in a year from now, I can come back and let you know how this all worked out.
Oh, that's wonderful. And we talked about that earlier as well too. What you're doing right now in my mind is, and I know you've read the book and you have the app as well too, you're allowing yourself to feel, right? And you're not going into fear. You're not succumbing to that fear and that assumption and that worry. That's what scared is all about. SCARED. How do you mentally process so that you can make an informed decision about that? And so you've done that. And I can clearly hear that in your voice. And now what you're doing is finding your own so what. And you've already started that as well too. You've said, well, what's my strategy or my plan? What options do I have? Gardening, butterflies, being on the board, finding your way so that you can bring change management still, your sense of yourself and your passion to others. And that's what Scared So What is all about. We also talked about the importance of ADKAR, and I just want to go on the record. ADKAR is probably my most favorite organizational change model.
Mm-hmm.
However, you've got to talk about the personal change first, as you and I've really spoken about. We've got to teach people how can they manage it for themselves, because they can accept change, but they can also reject change. So that's powerful. And they can get lost in between, especially if they can't find their own way forward. So that's where I've always shown, let's do personal change first with Scared So What to set a foundation. And then my go-to model of choice is ADKAR, because now we know everyone has the awareness. We definitely know who has the desire. We can instill the knowledge, and we can actually drive the process forward. And that's critically important if we do that together. Do you agree?
I agree 100%. I think there's the tool that you've given us was Scared So What. And I'll admit, at first I thought, oh, another change management book, because there's so many out there.
Yeah.
But it hit the personal side. And that was the one thing that was missing. I
Yeah.
felt that we need to be the cobblers that have shoes on. In fact, we don't have just shoes. We have a collection of shoes depending on
Yeah.
how we feel. But we're not barefoot and we're not running around trying to do it for everybody else first. So the foundation, if we're strong in foundation and change, and doesn't mean that we don't go through the emotion and the whole gamut of what we go through, but it means that we're aware of it. And I think that puts us in a better position to be there for others.
That's wonderful. Sylvie, my final question for today's episode. What is one thing of advice you'd like to give out to people about change, coaching, leadership, or just life?
Oh my gosh, do what you love, do what you're passionate about. I think that the passion drives us to what's important. It may not be the nicest thing you could do, or you may feel that it's something that people will devaluate. It's not their life. You have your own life. Go by your passion and go what makes you happy. And if that means that you have to retire 20 times, hey, why not?
Transform yourself. I love that. Well said. Well, listen, Sylvie, thank you so much for being my guest on the show today. It's a joy, as always, to be able to speak with you. And for you, my listeners, if you'd like to learn more or to connect with Sylvie, I'll put her LinkedIn profile in the bio section of this episode. Thanks so much, Sylvie, for joining in. Have a blessed day, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much, Grant.
Thanks for joining us here on the Scared So What podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Grant Van Ulbrich. If you found any of this information insightful, well, give us a like and follow along. Make sure that you tune in each week for more episodes as we talk further about what is personal change, how do you manage it with Scared So what about coaching, and also leadership, and how all three of these tie together. If you'd like to learn more, then go to our website at www.scaredsowhat.com. Thanks so much for listening, and I hope that you come back soon.